We have lots to discuss here in today's video, mostly focused on the Vancouver Canucks. President Jim Rutherford gave us lots of sound bites and headlines and a few bombshell quotes around the team moving forward at their end-of-season media availability today, with the biggest one being the future of Captain Quinn Hughes, saying, "We all know he wants to play with his brothers," and we'll discuss what that means, what he said next, and could it even involve tampering? We'll have to see. Plus the future of Thatcher Demko, what's going on with Tom Willander, the future of head coach Rick Tocchet, and even Elias Pettersson. Is he going to be traded this summer? Do they still believe in him? What do they expect from him? We'll discuss all the quotes and more. Plus we have a big update regarding the World Junior trial from the 2018 Team Canada team and some injury updates for the Stanley Cup playoffs. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we're going to be heavily focused on the Canucks today, but a few other quick items to touch on before we dive into all of the Canucks content and the Jim Rutherford quotes that I get everybody talking here today. One, the Avalanche have activated captain Gabriel Landeskog from injured reserve, so I suspect he is going to play tonight. As of the recording of this video, which is a couple of hours before their game starts, we don't have an official lineup to say 100% that he's in, but all indications are that he is. Obviously, looks like from everything they've said between activating him and what their social media team has posted today, I think we can bank on Landeskog making his much anticipated return to the NHL after a really, really long absence. So hopefully things go well for him tonight. In Edmonton, they're kicking off their series with the Los Angeles Kings tonight. We are confirmed that Leon Draisaitl will return tonight. Jake Wallman will also return. Trent Frederick might return tonight. He's only played a whopping 7 minutes since he was traded to the Oilers at the trade deadline, but he's considered a game-time decision. And on the blue line, it looks like Josh Brown is going to be slotting in on the third pair. That's not a good thing for me. I think Josh Brown is a major liability to that team. I'm going to be really curious to see how things go. I know the Oilers are going to probably come out with a chip on their shoulder and think people are doubting them. And I guess we'll see just if we're right or wrong on that front. And also tomorrow is a big day when it comes to the 2018 Team Canada players that are accused of a heinous crime. Of course, the World Junior team that year has 5 players facing trial for sexual assault, which after all this time will kick off tomorrow. We did see a pretty significant update from TSN's Rick Westhead here today, confirming that a number of other players on that roster, but that are not facing charges, will be called to testify. And they're expected to be, at least. However, and some of them are still in the playoffs. We don't have any names of who's going to be called, but we know that some are still playing, so you can kind of probably narrow things down. That's not really relevant here anyway. All we do know is that those players are not going to be expected to testify in person in London, Ontario. They are going to be allowed to appear remotely and conduct their testimony via Zoom. So we'll find out probably more, and I suspect to be a newsy day in regards to this topic tomorrow once the trial officially kicks off. So we'll see more on that later. In regards to the Canucks, Jim Rutherford has always been the kind of guy who speaks his mind. He tells you what he thinks. He's not afraid to give you the big quotes. And man, there's been numerous times over his career, especially in the last decade, where he's given some pretty, what you call like a bombshell quote, or just, things that you don't expect, things that a lot of other managers and presidents just won't say publicly. He's not afraid to speak his mind, and he and Patrick Allvin conducted their end-of-season media availability today. And they had a lot to say. I mean, they didn't offer up a lot in their opening remarks. Basically took a little bit of accountability for the lack of success this year, indicating that they thought the Canucks went from a contending team who won the division last year to suddenly finding themselves being a team in transition due to an unfortunate incident within the team. Of course, we know that means the situation between JT Miller and Pettersson. Of course, he said that it wasn't just those two guys who were having difficulty getting along and with their relationship, that it filtered into most of the rest of the team as well. And kind of sounds to me like they, that there was people taking sides and certainly had a level of toxicity within that dressing room. They didn't want to elaborate any more on specifically what happened or anything, just that they've tried everything they could to resolve it. Once it became clear that they were not able to, They approached JT Miller about possibly moving since he had trade protection, and he did agree to that he would consider waiving. And then over time, they said that JT became kind of anxious and wanted to get this taken care of, and basically said that he would agree to a trade to the New York Rangers, and well, they made it happen. Obviously, like I said before, when they made the trade of Miller to the Rangers, I know Canucks fans might not have been super thrilled with the return, but they just lacked leverage, and now that's what happens when everything becomes as public as it was. Other teams are going to take advantage of that, right? So, and at the end of the day, it is what it is. Then they start taking questions. They face a lot of questions on, like I said, Pettersson, Tocchet, Willander, Demko, Hughes, etc. The big focus of one of the biggest ones in the beginning was Pettersson. And I tell you, I really wonder about the future of Pettersson in Vancouver. Now, they were asked point blank, is Pettersson a player you still believe in? Could we see him be traded this year? We know that his trade protection kicks in July 1st. Is it possible you could entertain a trade before then? Is he back next year? Can you put that to rest now and say, I have no intent to trade him and he'll be on this roster next year? And Patrick Allvin was pretty point blank and said that I'd be stupid not to consider all my options. So again, they said they very much believe in Petey. They said that they believe that he can be a better player than he was this year, and that he can get back to being more of what he was in the past. But they also had a lot of things that they listed that he needs to get better at. So, I mean, for them to go as detailed as they did, saying what they expect from him, might hurt his trade value. So I do wonder what the likelihood of a trade is. But if another team listened to this and had to hear to what they had to say, and they really like this player and think they can get him back on track, they're going to be picking up the phone to call Allvin Rutherford tomorrow. I have no doubt. But Elias Pettersson, essentially, they said he wasn't prepared for training camp this year, and that played a big role in things as well, saying that they need him to buy into being a complete player and working hard. I mean, these are pretty condemning things. I mean, he said he'll always be a player who gets his points, but do you want to be on a contending team? He referenced the fact of when Stan Bowman, no, it's not him. Rutherford even referenced the fact when Scotty Bowman first went to Detroit and had the conversations with Steve Yzerman, who had always been a high point producer, but the Red Wings hadn't won the cup yet. And they hadn't gotten over that hump. And then, he got him to buy in to being a more complete player and changing his game a little bit, and they ended up winning after. So, he kind of used that as an example of what they expect Pettersson to do. He said it also needs to buy into what the coach wants. And he didn't say Rick Tocchet, he said the coach, because there's still some uncertainty there, and we'll get to that in a second. He also said that he's already kind of started putting in some of the work, that he's been around Vancouver still since the season's ended, and they've seen him working hard and doing some of the things that they want him to do. But yeah, the fact that they said that we'd have to be stupid not to keep our options open, I think it's far from a guarantee that Elias Pettersson is back next year, although they did acknowledge the fact that when they were asked point blank as well, like, what do you think this team needs to improve upon to be better next year and to kind of have any chance to get back to where you were? He said they were quite comfortable with their goaltending, thought that the D-core was in a good spot. It was mainly within the forward group, and their center depth more specifically was what needs to get better. So, and that was even, like I said, put into the question when I asked about Pettersson, with your center depth being the weak point of the team, if you trade your top center, what does that mean for the position moving forward? Anyways, and it kind of just said like they have to keep all options open, and they were asked what they might be willing to give up for assets, and Rutherford basically said they're going to have to do whatever it takes. He said that obviously acquiring a high-end center is expensive, but it's super important, and it can be almost more expensive to not make a deal because it sets your team back to not go out and get that kind of player. They acknowledge that Brock Besser and Pia Suter may not be back. When it comes to Besser, it's expected right now that they've made their final offer to him, and that essentially that he's going to test the market. If he can get the deal he's looking for elsewhere, then he's a goner. And if for some reason the deals are not there like he's expecting on free agency, then on July 1, they'll circle back and consider reuniting, so to speak. But otherwise, I think Besser's a goner. Myself, Suter, for the most part, maybe he's back, but again, I think they don't want to overpay. He had a career season. And if they can get him on a better bargain deal, then they'll consider keeping him. But otherwise, no, they feel that they're at least 3 forwards away from having the more complete forward group that they need to be back to being a contender. So that's just a lot of things about Pettersson. And of course, we've heard what Rick Tocchet had to say lately as well, that he has to change his offseason training routine. He needs to be better at looking after himself in the offseason and training. He needs to change his practice habits. And for a player that's this far into his career, those are serious red flags and concerns for me. Can you really win with this guy? I have serious doubts now. I'm not sure how the fan base feels. I don't know what they really think internally. Of course, they say they still believe in him, but that's a lot of big-time concerns on a player that's supposed to be your highest paid player in franchise history. So, again, we will see what happens, but would it shock me if Pettersson was traded? Not even in a little bit. Would it shock me if he's not traded? Not even a little bit either, because that's going to be a tough contract to move. It's an expensive player, and what can they get back? To me, if they're going to move Pettersson, they have to get a centerman back who they feel can play a top 6 role and contribute, to a point that they feel like they're going to be at least as good of a team. That's going to be challenging to do. So we'll see. But he's out there for sure, and they won't rule out trading him, but they believe in him, whatever that's supposed to mean. On Tom Willander, one of the top prospects, the expectation was he'd be signed and joining the team, maybe playing in Abbotsford. Alvin said that his agent or advisor informed them like last week that he was going to be going back to school. They were surprised by this. They knew that there was some interest from the Swedish national team for some exhibition games or something that they wanted him to maybe be a part of. But otherwise, because I think he's back in Sweden for that right now. So we'll see, what the future holds there. But I really think it boils down to money. Again, I just don't think they could come to terms on a contract. And I think it's more of a case of Willander just wanting what he wants and Canucks not offering it. So we'll see. I don't think there's too much concern there just yet, but whether or not Willander's a pro next year still doesn't look that way, but things can change if they can get things worked out. On Rick Tocchet, they confirmed they will not exercise his team option because the way his contract was structured is that this year was a team option to extend the contract for another season, and they decided they're not going to do that. There was word before from NHL reporters saying that they absolutely would, that they would keep him under contract because they like him as a coach and they don't want him to leave. But as I said it numerous times, it's like I don't see them doing that. It doesn't make any sense. Why do you want a coach there if he doesn't really want to be there, or you don't see him being the coach on a longer-term basis beyond the season? And at the end of this year, basically, they really like Rick Tocchet. And they said under challenging circumstances this year, they feel like he and his staff did a tremendous job. It's not about whether or not they think he's a good coach or whether or not he's the right coach for them. This is all boils down to whether or not Rick Tocchet really wants to continue in this role. Now, they said quite clearly that they've made Rick Tocchet a contract offer to extend him. So rather than go on the team option next year, they presented him with a new contract. Didn't say the term or the money, but they said it would essentially make him the highest paid coach in Canucks history. Again, that doesn't really necessarily mean it's going to get it done, because he's got his market for what he feels he's at. And he was a Jack Adams Award winner last year, well-respected coach, and there's a bunch of openings. And there's other teams I think would love to get their hands on him. So, yeah, the fact that they might offer him more than they've paid other coaches in the past doesn't really mean anything. So they expect there to be an answer from Tocchet within a week, but it sounds to me like they're trying to force this contract on him, and it's almost like a take-it-or-leave-it situation. So I honestly don't have a lot of confidence that Rick Tocchet is going to be back. My take on it is more likely not that he leaves, but if that offer is better than people think it is, then maybe he stays. But again, they were asked as well about his assistants. If Rick Tocchet doesn't return, what's the status of assistant coaches like Gonchar and Adam Foote, etc.? Would they be gone too? Are they tied to him? And Alvin basically reiterated the fact that they're trying to bring Tocchet back. That's their expectation. They want to have him back. So they're tied to him, of course, and we'll see what happens. But that's all they would say. So, again, we'll see what happens. But for them to say that an answer to be expected within the next week, to me, sounds like they've made him a take-it-or-leave-it offer. And based on that, I'm kind of leaning towards that he's not back, but that's just a gut feeling. We don't know what the offer is, and we will see. But we know that Seattle fired their coach today. We know that the Rangers recently fired their coach. We know there's an opening in Boston. There's a few others as well. There's definitely, Philadelphia, who he's got ties to. He's going to have lots of options. So, I don't know. That's why I think that the odds are greater that he leaves, but don't know that for sure. And Thatcher Demko, of course, the goaltender who's got tremendous skill, but again, has been dealt with a ton of injuries. Entering the final year of his contract, when asked about Demko, essentially Rutherford said that they are interested in extending him, but acknowledged that there's a lot of risk involved. So it's going to boil down to, can they find a contract that both sides, from a risk perspective, are comfortable with? Obviously they signed Lankinen to a longer-term deal with a big raise. I don't think they paid Lankinen that to be a backup. So at the very least, they would probably want to run with a tandem. And if Demko's not back, then Lankinen will probably be a clear-cut starter with another backup. But in Demko's case, we don't know what's going to happen, but he acknowledged the injuries, the fact that there's risk involved. There's interest there to extend him, but it's complicated because of the injuries, and we'll have to see where that goes. So we don't have quite as much of a expectation of what's going to play out on that front. But the biggest bombshell of the day was on Quinn Hughes, because the last question of the press conference was basically put to him that Canucks fans' biggest fear is not even so much what's going to happen this summer, but possibly next summer when Quinn Hughes is eligible for free agency. So, obviously, are they going to be able to extend Quinn Hughes? What are you preparing for that? What can you tell? What's the status of being able to keep him here? What can you say? Whatever. And essentially went on to say that for right now, what they can prepare for is making sure that from their salary cap perspective, that when he's eligible for an extension, that they're in a great cap space situation to be able to offer him the contract he deserves. Okay, that is a good logical step. Good answer. The next part dropped everybody's jaws when he said, but we all know for Quinn it may not be about money. We all know he wants to play with his brothers. And it's like, whoa, what? I mean, that's not shocking to find out that brothers want to play together. That's not shocking. However, we've never heard anybody at the Canuck level, the Devil level, or anybody at these teams acknowledge anything like this, or them personally as players. So then he goes on to say, ultimately, that's beyond our control. So basically saying if he wants to leave and go join his brothers, we can't stop him, and that's true. I guess they can't. They can offer him the moon, but if that's more important to him to go play with his brothers, then it's not going to matter. Then he goes on to say, or it could be within our control if we bring his brothers here. And Jim, I think that might be tampering. You just talked about other teams' players that are under contract. I don't know if that's... Anyway, soft tampering, which was a term we heard from before from Michael Landlauer. Very interesting comment. I wouldn't be shocked that he may not get a fine, but will he get a call from Gary Bettman and ask him never to say something like that again? Probably. Are Jack and Luke going to leave New Jersey and go to Vancouver? If I had to place a bet on it, I'd say no, zero chance. For one, Tom Fitzgerald, the GM of the Devils, great relationship with the Hughes family. If I'm not mistaken, I do think that they are, I'm not sure, I think they're related, but I know at the very least they're very tight and good friends. So I just don't see that happening. I don't see Quinn luring his brothers from the New Jersey Devils to Vancouver. And for one, their contracts extend. Jack Hughes is signed long term. Looking at the contracts, it would take a lot longer for that to happen. So, whereas Quinn's contract, where he's a little bit older than them, coming up sooner, there's just no way. There's no way. Could they make a trade? Sure. But what's the Vancouver Canucks going to offer the Devils to get the Hughes brothers to Vancouver? I'm sorry, that ain't happening. Could New Jersey trade for Quinn? Sure. If they want to get ahead of it and have the Canucks have a chance to recoup something instead of losing Quinn for nothing, yeah, I guess that could happen too. But does Quinn Hughes really want to go to New Jersey? Will he sign another contract? To me, I mean, he seems like a great captain. He seems like somebody who's very committed to winning there. We've never really seen anything out of Quinn to suggest he's ready to bolt or take off. I'm sure this was a very trying season. But yeah, Rutherford's given us a bombshell headline, so we have to talk about it, and it's very interesting, to say the least. But if you're a Devils fan, I'm sure your ears perked up today hearing that Quinn Hughes wants to play with his brothers. Oh my goodness. Are the Canucks about to implode? They went from being a contending team, winning their division, come out of nowhere. Rick Tocchet was getting everything chugging in the right direction. And now we're in a situation where they've missed the playoffs the following year. The head coach might be gone. The captain might want to go play with his brothers. Pettersson's not the same dude and might get traded. JT Miller's gone. Brock Besser's probably leaving. Thatcher Demko, well, we don't know what's going on with him in the next year. Like, whoa. Talk about an internal implosion. This is crazy. The team go from way up here to way down here in record time. Yeah, if I'm, and then what's going to happen next? Is Rutherford just going to ride off into the sunset and be like, okay, well, I'm out. See you later. I don't know. This is going to be a very interesting team to monitor over the next year or two for sure. So let me know your thoughts on all these crazy Canuck quotes from Jim Rutherford mostly. Well, Alvin didn't really give us too much for bombshells. He was a little bit more careful with what he had to say, but we've heard this before from JR. This is not the first time, won't be the last that he gives us these types of quotes to get a huge reaction. So let me know what you think down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.